Good evening. Welcome. Huh. I'm not up to doing my Transylvania voice. Thank you for joining Two Way tonight. I'm Mark Halperin. Friday night lights. Great for you to join us. Appreciate you being here. We have an example from two wonderful people of what happens when peace, love, and understanding, the presumption of grace, flies the coop. I'll be showing that to you tonight, as well as a discussion of Super Bowl, whatever it is. I don't know. What number Super Bowl is it? I never pay attention to the number, but I feel like I should know. Talk a little bit about the Super Bowl, and Hogan Gidley will be here to talk about all things Trump. President Trump did, as we predicted on the morning meeting, talk up a blue streak, both in the photo op, where he said something hilarious, which I can't wait to show Hogan, about Time Magazine, and in the press conference, where he made a lot of news and said a bunch of stuff, which we'll show you. Once again, the day was dominated by Elon Musk and Doge. We'll talk about it. Again, a couple great guests. Always, as always, want your questions. Raise your hand if you're here on the two-way platform if you'd like to get in the conversation, either about the Super Bowl or about politics. I bet there's some people with Super Bowl questions for our guest, Ethan Strauss, one of the most iconoclastic and iconic sports writers in America. And then if you're watching on X or on YouTube, when we get to the portion in the newscast where I show you two nice men, fathers, husbands, great guys, just taking the presumption of grace and chucking it into the trash, I don't want you to be inspired by that to do what they did. Rather, I want you to say, bad fellas, don't do that. Okay? We'll get to that in a minute. And a bunch of other stuff. It's another big news day, and I'm once again forced to think about which of the many, many stories we should talk about and which of the many, many pieces of video that we've assembled we should be playing. And it's a tough choice, I have to say. Let's start with latest breaking news. A federal judge halted the USAID layoffs, which were about to take place this evening. Almost the entirety of the team. Some of the people have already flown home. Not ideal for the personal lives of those folks, taking their kids out of school, flying home, and then it turns out, oops, you got a job back in Africa or wherever. So the judge halted it till next week. We knew this was going to happen. We knew federal judges, including Trump nominees, which is judges, I believe, making decisions to put a pause on these things, to have the cases argued on the merits, whether it's appropriate for the executive branch to just start crossing out federal agencies created by a supposedly co-equal branch of Congress. Donald Trump today was asked about this question of the elimination of most of the jobs at USAID. He talked about it several times. Let's play number 3, please.
Elon is doing a great job. He's finding tremendous fraud and corruption and waste. You see it with the USAID, but you're going to see it even more so with other agencies and other parts of government. He's got a staff that's fantastic. He's wanted to be able to do this for a long time, and everybody else knew it was existent, but I think never so much when you look at USAID. That's a fraud. The whole thing is a fraud. Very little being put to good use. Every single line that I look at in terms of events, and
you can dump out of this, Sam. You can dump out of this and put up, while I talk, put up number 4. So there's two things at issue, right? One is the elimination of thousands of positions, almost the entirety of USAID. And then there's a question of the agency itself, which the administration, again, without Congress's support or approval, is trying to fold into the State Department. So you see this tweet from Doge, unburdened by what has been from the USAID. And then, again, even though a judge has now said, let's hear arguments about this before it goes into effect, play number 5, please. You watch this video. This is kind of an epic video. It's like from the movie. Some worker on this, this thing, taking the letters down, removing the signage from USAID. I don't know what they're going to put up in its place, like Holiday Inn, or I don't know. And I don't know what the urgency is to take down the sign. But the judge, I don't know if the judge is going to order the sign to be put back up. All right, I'm just going to give you some highlights of other things because I want to get to our guests and I want to get to the horror of the presumption of grace and peace, love, and understanding in the toilet. Great comedy between the new Japanese prime minister and President Trump, first time they'd ever met. He's kind of a protege or associate of Prime Minister Abe, who was prime minister during Trump's first term. Abe loved golf. He sucked up to Trump. They got along very well. That was a relationship where I think even Trump critics would have to admit Trump did very well with the Japanese. They liked him a lot. Today, the new prime minister said that Trump seemed scary on TV, but he really liked him in person. He's a very nice guy. And Donald Trump was extremely deferential. I am a student of the Japanese-U.S. relationship. It's the most important bilateral relationship in the world, in my view. And they both said the things that presidents and prime ministers of Japan have said for decades. All the right buzzwords. The Japanese coverage, which I'm going to read later tonight, the Japanese are going to be, as we say in Japanese, kvelling over how how on historical message President Trump was in extolling the Japanese and the relationship. At the same time, he said the Japanese are going to work with him to eliminate the trade deficit we have with Japan, which has been persistent, of course, back since the 80s, by having the Japanese buy more energy from the United States. All right. President today said in his press conference that Social Security would not be touched. The new Secretary of Energy criticized Joe Biden's energy policies. And Elon Musk canceled, you can put up number 10, please. Elon Musk canceled an Anthony Fauci exhibit at the NIH Museum that cost apparently $168,000. There it says 182 million, but whatever. Oh no, there it is. Includes terminating a $168,000 contract for an Anthony Fauci exhibit. I have to say, least surprising development of the Trump administration so far that they would cancel a Fauci exhibit. I don't care if it cost $1.68, they would still cancel it for obvious reasons. Okay, this is arguably put up number 11. This is arguably the single greatest act of populism that would test 90-10 Donald Trump has ever done. He's signing an executive order next week to end the ban on paper straws. Okay? Or I'm sorry, not the ban on paper straws, the ban on plastic straws. Make people use paper straws, which President Trump, 3 truer words never spoken, which don't work. This might get him the 3rd term. This might cause a populist uprising to say he should get a 3rd term. The man understands politics. All right. Lastly, Hakeem Jeffries, number 13. Hakeem Jeffries, the Democratic leader in the House, met with Silicon Valley leaders today, donors, to try to mend fences. We've talked about this both here and on the morning meeting. Extremely important development in the history of the two parties, where the Republicans are not just the majority party, but they're now seen as the pro-Silicon Valley party. And Hakeem Jeffries, one of his primary jobs to win back the House majority is to raise money from deep pockets. The Silicon Valley deep pockets are, I don't know if they're tilting fully towards Trump, but obviously some very prominent Silicon Valley people are pro-Trump now. And so this is a big task for Hakeem Jeffries. All right. So let me do one more thing, and then we're going to talk a little about the Super Bowl. Again, if you got Super Bowl questions, I'm going to want to ask you to raise your hand and then raise your physical hand. This morning or last night, the Wall Street Journal reported that one of these young men, they're all men, working for Trump or for Doge, had an association with the Twitter account that tweeted a lot of stuff that was racially insensitive. I try not to use the word racist if it's not clearly racist. If it's just racially insensitive, I think it's more appropriate, because I think racism is a pretty serious charge. But clearly they were racially insensitive, and it was reported he resigned. Well, Musk didn't want him to resign. Now, I'm curious about if he told Musk he was going to resign, or somebody told Musk this guy's got to resign or he'll be fired. But whatever happened, whatever knowledge or Musk had, or whether he signed off on it originally, he changed his mind, and he did a poll on Twitter on X saying, should the guy be allowed to come back? Now, as you know, the right has been used as a rallying cry, and it's not a 0% reason why Donald Trump won. The backlash against cancel culture really impacted a lot of people. A lot of moms like Trump because of Maha, but a lot of moms like Trump because they don't want their sons living in a world where they can be canceled for one stray act. And so there's a deep sensitivity in MAGA over anything having to do with cancel culture. And the point of view of this kid's supporters, call him a kid, young man, is these were old tweets, and his life shouldn't end, his career shouldn't end for some old tweets. So in response to the poll, that Musk did. JD Vance, who has a tweet retweet relationship with Musk, they're constantly reinforcing each other. JD Vance tweeted this, number one of this series. Please put up. All right, here we go. Here's my view, JD Vance says. I obviously disagree with some of Ella's posts. That's the name of the young man. But I don't think stupid social media activity should ruin a kid's life. He's calling him a kid. That's probably what I was keying off of. We shouldn't reward journalists who try to destroy people, ever. So I say bring him back. If he's a bad dude or a terrible member of the team, fire him for that. Leave this tweet up for a second, please. So in the press conference, President Trump was asked, do you agree with J.D. Vance? And I can't remember if the question also included Musk, but I know it said, do you agree with Vance, who thinks he should be brought back? And Trump said, well, I'm not really familiar with the facts. Whether he was or not, that's what he would say. And then Vance was sitting right there. So he said, well, Mr. Vice President, what do you think? And Vance signaled, yes, bring him back. So Trump said, okay, I agree with the vice president. So now you got Musk and Trump and Vance all saying, regardless of the racially insensitive tweets, whenever they were, whatever they said, bring him back. Now, Ro Khanna, one of the insensitive tweets was insensitive about Indian Americans, okay? Immigrants, Indian immigrants in the United States. Make that clear. So Ro Khanna, who's been here before and is a very thoughtful guy, says, are you going to tell him to apologize for saying, quote, normalize Indian hate before this rehire? Just asking for the sake of both our kids. Because, of course, both Ro Khanna and J.D. Vance's wife are Indian Americans. Their kids are Indian American, have Indian American heritage. If you're looking to say who fired the first shot, and what you're about to see is a pretty not peace, love, and understanding exchange between Khanna and Vance, do you think Khanna's tweet is a shot? Or do you think it's thoughtful and productive and good dialogue? I'm not sure. I think it's okay. So here's now what Vance says. For the sake of both our kids, grow up. That's a shot. Grow up to a congressman. I think I'm safe saying that. Racial trolls on the internet, while offensive, don't threaten my kids. You know what does? A culture that denies grace to people who make mistakes. A culture that encourages congressmen to act like whiny children. All right, now, leave this one up, please. Okay, so there's a great Tom Lehrer line where he says, I can't remember the exact line, but he says something like, people who are mean-spirited, da-da-da, and I hate people like that. Now, so here is Vance saying, he's basically denying grace to Ro Khanna because he's saying Ro Khanna is denying grace to the young man who was fired. So again, maybe you say Ro Khanna started it with his tweet, but Vance is now at DEFCON 0 or whatever on peace, love, and understanding. So now Khanna responds. Oh no, there's another Vance. I don't worry about my kids making mistakes or developing views they later regret. I don't even worry that much about trolls on the internet. You know what I do worry about, Ro? That they'll grow up to be a U.S. congressman who engages in emotional blackmail over a kid's social media post. You disgust me. All right, again, whatever you want to say about Congressman Khanna's initial tweet, those two tweets to me take it to a crazy place. Because these are two, I don't know them, neither of them all that well, but I know them a little bit. They're two lovely guys. They're very nice guys. They're not hotheads. They're just not. And yet these two tweets I find incredible. All right, another one from Khanna in response. Saying I am whiny and you disgust me may be your way of showing strength. Personally, I don't think you have to hurl insults or be mean-spirited to have a free exchange of ideas. Our country at its best, Lincoln Douglas, was not like that, and you at your best, JD, were not either. I forget how well they know each other, but I'm sure they do because they have some overlapping circles. I got to say, and again, I try not to take sides in fights like this, but I think the vice president really escalated it, and I'm not really sure why. And of all people to escalate it against, Ro Khanna, who is one of the most thoughtful people in the Democratic Party, if those of you who've seen him here or elsewhere know that. The whole thing baffles me, but I denounce them both for participating in it. But I do think the vice president, for reasons I don't quite get, really escalated it, and maybe Ro Khanna made it personal by invoking the kids. Maybe that's what set him off. But man, I'm deeply troubled by it. I really am because one of my missions on this platform and in general is to try to have an ethos of peace, love, and understanding in our political dialogue, the extension of the presumption of grace. And for those two guys on a Friday over some young man's social media account, for it to escalate to that, very discouraging. I'm hoping they'll both come on the program and make up here. That's my goal. So we'll ask them both to come. All right. So now I've got a few more things I want to show you in terms of political stuff, but we're going to take a brief break from talking about politics to talk about the Super Bowl with someone who is as good a talker about American sports as anybody I know. Welcome in his first time on this platform, Ethan Strauss. Ethan Strauss, welcome in.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. This is, in my estimation, sorry about the frog in my throat, but it is, in my estimation, the best political program in the United States. So I'm happy to be here.
Now, that's very nice of you to say, and I appreciate it. But is that like friendly, like suck up to the host?
No, no, no,
Explain why.
no.
Explain why you think it's the best, please.
No, there is a YouTube clip of me discussing this with Nancy Rommelman, who I know comes on this podcast on occasion.
Yes,
I
sir.
think one of the reasons it's that great blend of insider, but also bringing in the outsider. So it's that. And it's also oddly, I would describe it as the best political podcast in America. And I would say the most humane. It's that peace, love, and understanding. And it's allowed me to understand the sheer capaciousness of American thought and the American voter, how you'll bring in people, just people, to discuss their views, and they're totally orthogonal and idiosyncratic and often unpredictable to me. And often when you're on Twitter and you see journalists debating, they're fitting everybody into this box. They're making assumptions about people. They're saying, oh, you're one of those bros, or you're somebody who likes this, somebody who likes that. When you talk to people on this show, you just get a sense that everybody is an individual. And I'll just say one thing before we get to some other topics. You moderated a debate between two viewers of yours, one a Harris voter, one a Trump voter, and it was on January 6th. And at one point, you interjected and you said, look, we're not going to settle this tonight, but we're going to stay on this because this is the only place in America publicly where this conversation is happening. And that really resonated with me because it's true. There just aren't many places where you see people actually exchange their thoughts and their perspectives on things they feel passionate about in this sort of cordial way. Unfortunately, you see a lot more of what we just saw from Vance and Khanna. So I could just lavish you with more praise, Mark. I could herald your sonorous mid-Atlantic accent. Actually, I mean, I know you want to talk Super Bowl. I mean, the issue that you were just talking about, I have thoughts on that because I feel as though my position in sports culture has allowed me to see the chasm in edginess between the young and the old. Or the young and the older, I should say. But we can take it wherever you want. No. It's your show.
I appreciate that. So let me bring Hogan Gidley in, who was President Trump's deputy press secretary in the first term, and Hogan's having some dinner, which is great. Hogan, someday I'll tell you about John Kerry having dinner once. What do you have in there? What is that, a burger?
A dark chocolate.
Dark chocolate. All right. Hogan, do you guys know each other?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
No.
I don't know.
Well, you're going to get to
Nice
know
to
each other.
meet you.
So
Nice to meet you.
Ethan, I'm a huge fan of yours, and I only learned after you did the podcast with Nancy that you knew what our show was. So for me, I'm grateful for all the praise and everyone who watches, but to have you as a viewer and an appreciator of the platform, very honored and very delighted. So thank you for that. Ethan, for those of you who don't know, has covered a lot of stuff, but Ethan, you tell me if I'm right. His greatest sort of moment in his sports journalism career was covering the Golden State Warriors. That's fair to say, right? That's like
Yeah.
And
traditional sports.
yeah. And but you wrote a book about the Warriors, and you were when you covered them full time. Who did you work for?
Well, I worked for ESPN, and then I later worked for The Athletic, and it got me.
Okay.
Yes, and it got me
So
started into some of these issues we talked about today. Yes.
How many years did you cover the Warriors?
I'd say about a decade.
Yeah.
There was about a decade.
That's when you came to my attention, because the Warriors, obviously, I'd say in the last 50 years, they're probably one of the 50 best sports stories, as a team, maybe even top 20. Super interesting team, super interesting relationship to their city. Obviously excellent in terms of whatever, but there are just so many great storylines. A colorful coach, obviously some all-time great players, and just there a bunch of stuff happened, right? They did a bunch of things with like nutrition, They did a bunch of stuff with like community. They just were a very modern team, in
Yeah.
terms of the how the owners dealt with them. Just a great story. And again, your work stood out because you are sophisticated. You're not just about like who's injured and how many assists somebody got. You're an anthropologist, and that makes to me it makes your work stand out. So really honored to
Oh.
have you here. So let's talk about the feud between Ro Khanna and the vice president. Ethan, what do you think of that? Like, how does that make you feel? What does that make you think about?
Well, the way I feel about it is I think that JD took it way too far in that circumstance, but I also think that it speaks to a restructuring we're having of whether you can get fired for what we might call racism. I know you were saying that that makes you feel uncomfortable. That guy, how do we pronounce his name? Is it Tellez? Is it the guy working for Doge? He said some things
And
that
yeah,
that you really shouldn't say, but
no,
at the same time, we've got this issue where I think a lot of young people are edgier than even like elder millennials like myself. And many of us have come up in this post civil rights era where the big taboo is racism. So much of our morality is orchestrated around that sense of don't be racist. And I think a lot of young people coming up, especially young white men, if we're going to be frank about it, if we're going to be blunt about it, are looking around and saying, yeah, that doesn't work for me. I think you can find an analog about young people in Germany who don't want to live under the shadow of Hitler. For instance, they want to forge their own morality, they want to do their own thing. And I look at Ro Khanna, and he seems like a nice guy. I don't dislike Ro Khanna, but he's somebody who pushes DEI. He pushes what we might call the modern version of affirmative action. And that does, in a way, lead to some of this edginess. And I just think you're seeing this break off of morality where if you start firing people for such opinions, you're going to run out of young men, especially. They're doing their own thing. They like to say things that even in my millennial cohort, you just don't say and you just don't do. So I think we're emerging out of a past, a recent past, where the Overton window on what you could say, especially on matters of race, was dime sized and completely enthralled to one ideology. That's been broken apart, and I think we're completely trying to figure out what the rules are and how wide that Overton window should be. And that's why even this might be a tempest in a teapot. It's really not. It's kind of a battle over a whole lot right here.
yeah. So Ethan, I'm not sure that Ro Khanna is particularly prominent in pushing DEI. And you may know something I don't, but
I saw him on
I
Bill Maher. I would
yeah,
say that he says he has a nuanced approach to it,
yeah,
but he still is very much of this perspective that if the results are not in accordance with the census categories, there's something wrong and something needs to be done. So I don't
yeah.
think he's
Okay.
broken. I wouldn't say he's the loudest proponent. I think Ro
Yeah,
Khanna is generally more moderate and reasonable than your average Bay Area Democrat. But
yeah,
he's certainly part of something that I think a lot of younger people look at and say, this might work in a boomer culture where the country's
yeah,
80% white, but in a country where most of our cities are not majority white, these policies are something that they're rejecting and, causes a bit of a harder edge. I'm not making excuses for this particular individual. I'm just
yep.
saying that the backlash is here. That's all I'm
Yep.
saying.
Yep. Okay. I'm going to look into Ro Khanna. I know he emphasizes the economy more than DEI, and that sets him apart from some. Hogan, I want to get you in, but I want to run a theory by you and kind of play off of what Ethan said. I've been thinking since that Twitter exchange about what would have set JD Vance off, and I said the invocation of Ro Khanna by Ro Khanna of the kids, maybe that
Yep.
set him off. But there's something else. The MAGA movement is got its boot, and maybe I shouldn't be using a metaphor of violence here, but I will. It's got its boot on the liberals, right? They got rich liberals not giving to universities because of support for Palestinians for Hamas. They have Hollywood on the run. They've got corporations on the run. They've got the NFL on the run, taking end racism out of the end zone, right? And MAGA's attitude is not, this is all great. Let's fold up our arms and be glad about what happened. Their attitude is keep going. Like a Don Jr., like we're gonna keep going. We're marching all the way to Baghdad and we're cutting the head off Saddam Hussein. More violent imagery. Sorry. So in this case, uh, uh, which I think what JD is trying to say is it ends here. Like, we're not playing the game of somebody uncovered some old tweets. We got to let the kids got to go because that's the way the game is played, and no one could defend the tweets. And what JD is saying, no, we're in power now, and we're on the march to Baghdad. And on the way, here's one thing we're going to change. We're not going to fire somebody because of some old tweets. We're not going to let the press say, we demand you fire him. And until you fire him, we're going to make a big deal of this every day. And we're not going to let the Democrats say to the press, how come they haven't fired him yet? Ask every day at the briefing. JD's saying it ends here. If he's a bad employee, fire him. But we're not going to fire people because they had some bad tweets. Hogan, thoughts?
First of all, Ethan, nice to meet you. And of all the praise you gave Mark, I watch this platform all the time. I get people coming up to me that say how great this is. It's fine. Let's relax. Let's not go too far here, Ethan. Okay. Now, no, it really is. It really is interesting in this time that we can have these kinds of conversations. And Mark, I do really appreciate you for having me on always to talk about them in the format you've kind of constructed here. I think I've said this before, but if you take away Trump's executive orders, if you take away policy with, through Congress or any type of legislation, what I do think a lasting thing that he has done for the Republican Party that will not go away in the foreseeable future is he basically said, it's okay to fight back. You don't have to say, okay, to the media, we'll play your game. The people that attack you, you don't have to kowtow. The era of the lovable loser, the self-deprecating Republican, I think is over. Now, is that always a good thing? I don't know. If the mea culpa's not there anymore, okay, fine. But I do think you're hitting on something here that's absolutely right, Mark, which is, no, I'm just not playing that anymore. The guy made a mistake. He doesn't deserve to be killed for it. He doesn't deserve to be deplatformed or canceled or whatever. Give the guy a chance here. And there is a growing sentiment, a growing backlash that the left went way too far on these types of things, whether it was Me Too, whether it was cancel culture on the internet, whatever. And the moms out there were worried about their kids. I think that was an undercurrent in this last election, that their sons particularly, I mean daughters too, but sons in particular, could really be hurt for the rest of their lives for some mistake like this. Now, we were all in an era, Mark, you and I don't know, Ethan, how old you are, but I'm so glad there was no social media when I was growing up, obviously, because you would be having a different conversation. But we live in this world where these things kind of live on in perpetuity. And I think JD was doing exactly what you said. I think you read that right, which is, first of all, you triggered me for bringing up my kids. And then second of all, no, I'm not playing that. And I think that's a show of toughness. And I think for the MAGA strain, they love it.
Yeah. Hey, Sam, can you put back up the first Khanna tweet and the second JD tweet? Can you put those up simultaneously with us so I can see them? Anyway, here's my question. First to you, Ethan. If you were Vice President Vance's comms director, and he said, hey, look at this tweet by Ro Khanna. Are you going to make him to apologize for the sake of both their kids? And he said, here's what I want to tweet back. What would you have said to the vice president?
I think the "you disgust me," that's got to be deleted. That's just too much. It's just too much. I think you can have sentiments. You don't have to get into that high dudgeon. I think that undermines some of what you're saying and some of what you're conveying. You could be steadfast. You can say, I'm not playing your game. You can make all these points without getting emotional and taking it there. So that is what I would advise. But I do think it is a response to the moral blackmail and this issue where this guy, his tweets are posts, they're indefensible. They are. But the problem is once you accept the premise that this sort of thing is grounds for dismissal, the definition of racism and bigotry often gets expanded by cynical people. It gets instrumentalized as this sort of moral blackmail to stop you from doing a job. And that's the conversation we're having right now as a society. Can we be functional over firing everybody all the time if they're in a controversial position for something they said in the past? And I think a lot of people have reached the point where they're going, I'm tired of it. I don't care what my plumber believes. I don't care what my doctor believes. All I care about is how good you are at doing the job. And I don't want to have this sort of conversation anymore. And I think that's what Vance is saying.
Yep. Put up the Vance tweet. I want to ask Hogan a question, but I want to play off something Ethan said, and I love the way you expressed it. Here's a problem with the dynamic we've had. Okay. Ethan has twice condemned the post that this young man made. I condemn them too, but I don't know the circumstances around them. And I don't know what's in his heart. Part of what's happened, okay? Part of what's happened by the left canceling people for old social media posts. Part of what's happened is the right, and Ethan is not this. Ethan condemned them. You don't hear people condemning them on the right because their tribal reaction is forget condemning them. I'm condemning the cancelers. They need to also condemn the posts because I don't want the kids of either of these guys to read those posts and say society doesn't care. Society's fine with that. That's the balance we have to have. Condemn the stuff, not in a sly, like, brushing off way. This is bad. It's unfortunate that he did this. These are hurtful things, and then say, but he shouldn't get the professional death penalty for them. And if he does come back, and it seems like he's going to come back, I'm wondering what the left will do, because the left should not be focused on do people want to hire him. That's their business if they want to hire him. But they should be condemning them. But they shouldn't go to war over condemning them and say his life should be ruined. And this is a criticism of Donald Trump forever. Because for half the country, what Trump and Vance are doing and Musk are doing is right. Hogan, answer the question. Would you have told the vice president to hit send on this thing?
Far be it for me to tell.
Calling whiny children. Would you say, Mr. Vice President, maybe not grow up whiny children? Yes or no? Would you have told him not to?
Hey, look, you're not going to get a yes or no out of me. I've been doing this way too long to throw yes or no.
Yeah.
But your clamoring for nuance is quite noble, Mark. It's just not been around for a while, and I think
we're trying to restore it.
Well, I understand that, but the blowback here, I think, good, bad, and different, right, wrong, is I'm just so sick and tired of every time someone does something, them getting excoriated, pilloried, attacked. So I'm not even going to address what the guy tweeted. I'm just going to fight back at the person.
No, I know. That's a problem, though.
Right.
That's a problem.
I know, but I'm saying it's a problem, I would argue, of the left's own making.
Okay.
They got us here.
That's tried to suggest that they started that dynamic. But look at J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance is insulting a very nice and respectable and bipartisan member of Congress much more than he's insulting the young man for his posts. That's not right. That's just not right. Yeah. Now, we're going to lose Ethan soon. So Hogan, stand by. Your son, how old's your son, Ethan?
6 years old.
6 years old. And he plays in a basketball team or league or?
Yeah. We got basketball practice. There are some sick dads. I'm going to have to figure out a way to conduct practice, Mark. We'll see how it goes.
Can your son do a crossover dribble?
He can do a short cross, as they say. We're working on the wide cross.
Okay. Can he make a basket on a regulation hoop?
He can. Not with great accuracy. Not with great accuracy. He can.
Yeah. Okay. Does he follow through on his jump shot?
He does. I'm trying. We just started. I didn't really prepare him for this. You'd think I would, but it's been very recent. But I'm quite excited about it right now.
All right. And you need to go in a couple of minutes. I just want to ask you some sports questions. And I hope you'll come back because there's a million other things I want to ask you about. He didn't say yes, Hogan. That means he might come back. You moved your journalism to Substack, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Tell people why you left ESPN Athletic for Substack.
Yeah, I asked out of my contract. I had a 3-year contract. It was during the insanity of 2021, and there was so much going on in the culture, and I felt like, again, the Overton window back then especially was so narrow, and I detected a huge misalignment with how most sports fans felt about culture and what sports media people were saying. I'll give one quick example. This executive order you mentioned that Trump signed that seems to be an 80% proposition. I can't really come up with one sports media member who has said, you know what? I don't think that biological males should play in women's sports. Now, that issue is not the issue I care about most, but I am with the 80% on. There's something very strange about that, very odd, how much groupthink there is and how ideologically consistent sports writing is. So I just wanted to open up a place where I could talk about all of it, where I could talk about sometimes just the games, but other times just say, hey, this is interesting right here. Why is nobody talking about this? Why aren't people at ESPN representing what the vast majority of the country and sports fans might feel? And I have to say it's worked out. It's worked out. The Substacks worked out. It seems to have connected. And now, just like you, Mark, I'm trying to figure out this whole vibe shift and where I stand in
Yeah.
it.
What's the name of your Substack for people who want to check it out?
House of Strauss.
House of Stress. Say somebody says, Ethan, I don't really follow pro football. I know the Super Bowl's on Sunday. What are 3 things about the game that are interesting for like a layperson?
I think the most interesting thing about it is how uninterested people are in it. Not to be too much of a hipster, but I was just dropping my other kid off at daycare today, and I was talking with one of the dads about how Mahomes is going for his 3rd Super Bowl in a row. Really historic accomplishment. Charismatic quarterback. Really fun to watch. Some would say he has the flair of a Steph Curry in basketball. And yet people aren't too excited about this. They're not too excited about the Chiefs. So that's a bit of a mystery to me. Why are we watching something historic and people just don't have their dander up in the way they might have during the evil empire of the Patriots? So that's interesting to me. I think in addition, Jalen Hurts, he's a controversial quarterback. Some people say he's not good. He's got a lot of leverage in terms of his legacy. And then on the cultural front, it appears that end racism is no longer going to be in the end zone. So this might be the last time you see that, though I'm not sure if it's actually going to be there for the Super Bowl. Those things, scattershot, are of interest to me, as is the game, because the Chiefs are just a beautiful team and they do everything right. Maybe that's why they're not interesting.
Yeah.
When you do everything right, it's but so interesting to people.
Yeah, you didn't mention Taylor. Good. All right. I want to get one two-way question to Ethan before he has to go, and it's literally a minute. If you've got a quick football question, raise your physical hand.
Yeah.
A really quick football question. Somebody raise their hand? Let's see. Nobody's got a football question? That's annoying to me.
Patty,
hold on.
Patty Baton.
Patty does.
Patty does. Oh, Patty. Thank you for spotting that, Ethan. Patty, quick football question for Ethan, please.
My cousin plays for the Eagles. He was a draft from Michigan, Trevor Keegan. What kind of a chance do the Eagles have?
I mean, I think they've got a great chance. I sort of suspect they're going to do it because I don't think Mahomes has thrown an interception in his last 8 games. This might be the moment he regresses to the mean at the worst possible time. And there's some randomness to interceptions. There is. Quarterbacks can't control for the most part, whether the incomplete pass gets caught by the other team or not. You know, you kind of been living high on the hog a bit, living nicely, living luckily right there. And the Eagles have a tremendous defense. Fangio has made them just so fearsome. They drafted well. I think people might be surprised by this one. Mahomes is the better quarterback. The Eagles have a coaching advantage. They've got so much going for them. I love Steve Spagnuolo, the defensive coordinator. But I might even pick the Eagles and look like an idiot. Here's the honest truth, people. I know as much as you guys do what's going to happen. I might say I worked in sports writing. That doesn't give me any kind of edge. I'm not like Mark, understanding that Trump would win the election before election day when it comes to this here Super Bowl.
Yeah. Ethan, what has the spread moved since the conference finals ended?
I haven't looked at it, but gambling in sports is another topic we can get into sometime if I am invited back.
I detest gambling. I really detest it. But I'm just curious because the spread gives you a sense of kind of the mood of the country about where people think it's going. That's why I asked.
It's a little tricky. I was just going to add, it's a little tricky because there are way more Eagles fans in the world than there are Chiefs fans. So the spread can be indicative of odds, but it can also be influenced by something like that.
Right. Ethan, I hope your son makes 100 baskets tonight. Oh. And I hope his crossover dribble, maybe a behind the back pass, something. We're so grateful to you, not just for your praise for two-way, but for coming here. As I said, a huge fan, not just of the quality of your journalism, but your perspective. I learned more about you tonight than I knew before, but I just love the way you approach covering sports. We need more of that, or maybe just more people to read you. So thank you.
Oh, you're too kind. And
come back if you want to. How about that?
Oh my God, I would love to. And very nice to meet you, Hogan. And thank you so much, Mark.
All right. Have a great evening. Thank you, man. Really appreciate it. All right. Ethan Strauss, go sign up for his Substack. It's excellent. All right, two things, Hogan. I'll get your reaction. This is two late breaking stories. I believe both broke as we came on the air, one just now. First, President Trump has fired the Kennedy Center board and made himself the chairman of the Kennedy Center. Not kidding. What do you think of that?
Sounds great. Good move.
Now,
That
Hogan,
whole board was
yeah,
corrupt from
yeah.
tip to stern.
Hey, Hogan, if President Trump says to you, "What should we do for Halperin?" Say, "Put me on the Kennedy Center board." That I would take.
Is that you would take that?
Yeah, I like the Kennedy Center.
Would you
Nice.
do if you would only commit to doing two-way live in the Kennedy Center several times a year?
What are the names of the halls in the Kennedy Center? Do you know? What are they
No.
called? Anybody know?
I've
What are
seen
those?
many things
Yeah.
there from the president's
Yeah.
box, though, and I have
Yeah.
to tell you, it's quite exquisite.
Yeah, I went. The last thing I saw at the Kennedy Center was when Dave Chappelle won the Mark Twain Prize.
Oh
And
my!
it was a great night. Now, you believe me on that one. I could easily have said, "Just kidding." Of course, he didn't fire the Kennedy Center board names of chair, but that one's true. This one, I think you're even more likely to say, "Obviously, that's not true, Mark." But according to my inbox, it is. Ready? Okay, Hogan, I want you to have a poker face like you're behind the podium. Ready?
Mhm.
I swear this is true. President Trump on Truth Social. There is no need for Joe Biden to continue receiving access to classified information. Therefore, we are immediately revoking Joe Biden's security clearances and stopping his daily intelligence briefings. He set this precedent in 2021 when he instructed the intelligence community to stop the 45th president of the United States, me, exclamation point, from accessing details on national security, a security provided to former presidents. The Hur report revealed that Biden suffers from, quote, poor memory, and even in his, quote, prime, could not be trusted with sensitive information. I will always protect our national security, and this is in all caps, surprisingly. Joe, you're fired. Make America great again, exclamation point. Hogan, your reaction to that late breaking news, which I have to say, Donald Trump is a counterpuncher. They took away his security clearance, and his attitude is he doesn't hold a grudge, but he does get even. Thoughts?
What's
Hogan?
good? What's good for the goose? I mean, look, this is so Donald Trump, and this is a move that obviously MAGA is going to be very excited about. Twitterverse will be happy about, at least on the Republican side, and the media is going to lose their mind about. But they've lost their mind about every single thing he's done up until this point. The great thing about the tweet, though, and the construct or the truth post, the construct of it is he was very clear in the historical precedent that was set by Joe Biden himself. So now for Joe Biden to turn around and then complain about this, which I'm sure he probably will, or his people will, whatever, it's very easy for Trump to go, "Hey, you did it to me. Here you go."
This is a hard one for them to complain about, and it's even hard for the press to get upset about it.
Oh,
But,
come on.
I'm not sure. Between Biden's mental acuity decline and the fact that Biden took his access away, I think even the press is they'll have to write the paragraph. I think they'll have to write the paragraph at least saying, not the acuity one necessarily, but they'll have to say this happened to Trump. All right, Hogan, have you ever been with Donald Trump when he found out he was on the cover of Time magazine?
Oh gosh, I don't know.
All right, how does Donald Trump feel about having been on the cover of Time throughout his career?
Oh, he likes the picture. I mean, if it's
He,
good,
he,
yeah.
he thinks it's a
He likes
big
it.
deal, right? Big deal to be on the cover of Time, right?
Well, it depends. It's
Yeah.
obviously a failing magazine that he didn't know was around until he was on the cover.
All right, so
of
you
it,
already
and he
know.
realized
You
it
already
was
know
around.
what you already know what he said today. For those of you who don't know, I want to show you. For those of us who know that Donald Trump, his whole life is being on iconic magazine covers. That's it. The kids, everything else, whatever.
Not his whole life.
So Elon Musk is on the cover of this week's Time magazine, sitting behind the Resolute disc. It's not a real photo, right? It's like a photo, like an illustration.
Yeah.
So here's Donald Trump, number 12, asked in the Oval Office today with the Japanese Prime Minister how he feels about someone else being on the cover of Time.
Mr. President, do you have a reaction to the new Time magazine cover that has Elon Musk sitting behind your Resolute desk?
タイムマガジンにイーロン・マスクが大統領の机の後ろで座っている写真がありますけども、それに関するコメントは何かありますか？
Is Time magazine still in business? I didn't even know that.
まだタイムマガジンは
So what I love about it, I'm going to ask you to play it again, Sam. Don't take it down. Play it again, Sam. Never said that before. Amazing. Put it back up, please. I love his face during the consecutive translation because it's not a normal Donald Trump face. Like he's not feeling great about this. Play it again and watch his face during the translation. Play it again, Sam. You played it for her. You can play it for me.
Elon Musk sitting behind your Resolute desk?
And I love the reporter who says, your Resolute desk. Look at that face. You don't see that face normally. That's not a normal Trump face.
Is Time Magazine still in business? I didn't even know that.
And just a hint of a smile when he says it, because he is pissed. Anyway, Hogan, thoughts on that?
That sounded like Ouija, who you and I both know.
Yeah,
who asked the question.
I actually don't know her. I know who she is, but I don't know her. Hogan, what are your thoughts on how Donald Trump reacted to that?
It's an epic response. I mean, in real time, Donald Trump's hearing this, and he just totally uses that moment to trash the media, which of course is always epic. It's one of those things like on Instagram or Twitter where they're going to play this, and then you hear the Snoop Dogg song come in, and then the black sunglasses come down, and that's what's going to happen. I mean, it's just such a great way for him to slap the media back on it. I don't think it matters all that much, but it was just kind of funny. And you could tell the reporter was trying to get under his skin with the phraseology and the emphasis. Your Resolute desk, obviously.
Yeah. So, all right. Hogan is not just an advisor to Team Trump, but to the Speaker of the House. What's going on with the Speaker's strategy? He said last night that he thought this morning they'd have an announcement about a reconciliation pathway. And now it appears the talks are going to continue into the weekend. Meanwhile, Senator Lindsey Graham, your fellow South Carolinian, is out there saying, we got this. The Senate's going to take over. So where does the Speaker and his team stand on this?
And again, I don't speak on behalf of Mike Johnson, but I was up there, this whole week, and I was actually backstage for Trump to speak at the prayer breakfast. And he's so great in moments like that. But backstage, he's getting ready and making sure he's presentable. And he looks over and says, "Give me my book." And the book is his speech. So he takes a look at his speech, and I'm right in front of him, but he hadn't looked up yet. But it's just so Trump, because he can survey the room he looks at his book and he goes, he sees me and just and comes walking right over. And then we start talking about this budget deal and start talking about what he wants out of the House of Representatives. And it's been very clear. They want to cut spending, no question about it, but he does want tax cuts and things like that. And for those who don't know, oddly enough, this is one of the most infuriating things I discovered when I went to start helping people out at the House of Representatives. Tax cuts are characterized or categorized rather as spending. So some of the people on the House side who are far right, if you're going to cut taxes, that's considered spending under the code. So they want a dollar for dollar cut for every tax dollar cut, if that makes any sense. Bottom line is, I will say they have really moved far in the last week from where they were to where they are now. They're having these conversations, and it looks like they're going to have something pretty substantial and significant to release quickly. And I think he's shooting for a markup on Tuesday, and that'll mean moving forward with all the things Trump wants, of course.
Right. All right. We'll keep watching that. Thank you for that. Donald, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are what's on your mind, please.
Sarasota, Florida, Trump voter. I have to make a couple of comments. One is that no one remembers when there was no one behind Trump or that was fighting like Trump. The milquetoast Republicans at that time.
Yep.
Nobody, and he taught them how to fight.
No question.
Because they didn't know how to fight.
Yeah.
Second of all, there seems to be a need for some type of cleansing going on, whether it's the Democrats or the reporters, because here's an example. Maxine Waters shows up today at the Department of Education.
Yeah.
Who cares? That was just, so it's like the baseball analogy. When you're losing and you don't have any reason to figure out how to change something, let's do a fight so we can at least try to change the momentum.
Yeah,
and
I'm with you, Don.
It didn't mean anything.
Yes, sir.
So, and since, so it comes down to a couple of, I know how you like the headlines, but it is, at the end of the day, I think people, as the lady that was on last night said, this is the show me, prove to me that this is worth spending something for, or let's drop it. Because we're tired of having the money that's half our salaries going out the door for some nebulous
yes, sir.
entity that doesn't even exist. It's
Yes.
really, I think that's really a CIA operation. It's funneling money, but that's beside the point. But
Don,
go ahead.
It's a very great point. And, I was on a show the other day and someone said something, it was about Ukraine, but they said, when did Republicans become the party of isolationists? I said, we're not. We're the party of receipts. You want to spend the money, fine, but show us where it's going and what it's going to do for America. The problem is when this lid got blown off of USAID, as you know, fascinatingly enough, it was like of all the things Trump did, and Democrats hate them all. Don't get me wrong. I get that they didn't like them all. But this one thing was very significant. They got really angry about this one thing. And that kind of was very telling. And Trump and I talked about this backstage at the prayer breakfast too, because he was like, it was their little fiefdom that they had built up and their little gravy train for all of their liberal programs that they used to hit us and attack us with. And to expose that, again, the two words I'm focused on in this administration is transparency, but also accountability. How many times do we find out something from behind the scenes? We're like, wow, I can't believe that. And then nothing happens. No one gets fired. They don't change the money. They don't cut it.
Okay, Hogan, what about the transparency of finding out the names and resumes of the people working with Elon Musk? Shouldn't that be done?
Well, again, you said the names of Elon Musk?
The people working with Musk. There's no transparency on who they are or what they're doing.
Yeah, but now that's not entirely accurate.
That's not a real issue.
The Secretary
of Treasury. It is a real issue. These people are making fundamental changes. Hold on. These people are making fundamental changes. They may be good changes, but they weren't elected. They've never been announced. They're human beings. They've never been announced. Who are they, Hogan? What are they doing? You talk about transparency. First, you can laugh all you want, Hogan, but you said one of your two key words was transparency. And there's no transparency about what's going on there. Again, it could be great, but have them come out and say, here's Joe and Billy and Freddie, and here's what they're doing, here's who they are, and here's what they're up to.
You know who they are. Okay.
No, we only know who they are because the press. We only know who they are because the press has uncovered who they are.
Listen,
that's not transparency, Hogan.
The Secretary of Treasury was very clear. These people are staffers. They have gone through the vetting process. They're working in his direction.
Tell us who they are. Tell us who they are.
We know who they are. The fact is, what they are doing is being reported in real time. They're boasting about what they're doing. They're talking about what they're doing. Everyone sees what they are designed to do is to find the problems and find the fraud, waste, and abuse and expose it. Like, I don't understand the problem. Hold on, but one more thing. On the unelected piece. But Trump was elected, just like Stephen Miller or Tom Homan,
Hogan,
Susie Wiles, they work for him.
Of course, Hogan. And there are plenty of people in the government who are never announced. But if you're going to brag about transparency, and these guys have enormous power, they're making huge changes. And I'm not being all scared of the changes. They might be great changes. But if you're going to give unknown people this much power, you cannot say who they are, what they're doing. Yes, they have, Hogan.
They're exposing it.
Tell that to the people. Tell that to the families who took their kids out of school in Africa and are flying back to the United States only to find that a federal judge has said, "Wait a minute, you might still have your jobs."
That's a Trump. That's a Trump thing. That's not an Elon Musk thing. That's a Trump thing. He asked him to go find it, and then he makes the call.
All right, hold on, because we're running up against the clock. But we happen to have Congressman Dan Lipinski, former congressman from Illinois, here today. Significant, and I'm not sure if this is why he came on, but he was on a previous episode here with Ro Khanna, and I'll tell you, they talked about the fact that Ro Khanna supported a primary challenge to congressman over abortion. And I tell you, it was one of the greatest examples of presumption of grace and peace, love, and understanding, because the congressman just had a civil conversation with Ro Khanna. He asked him pointed questions, but in a respectful way. I think about it all the time because it was a paradigmatic of what we want this platform to be. So, Congressman, I think you set a better example than the vice president in tangling with Ro Khanna. But tell us what you'd like to talk about tonight. And thank you for coming in. Very good to see you, sir.
Thanks, Mark. Your discussion about J.D. Vance and Ro Khanna is really main reason why I zoomed in here. A couple things. I think what you said about it, I think was right on target about both of them. They both disgusted me in what they did. But one thing that you seem to miss is that Khanna was asking Vance to tell this guy to apologize. Now, that's not to cancel him. He didn't say, you need to get rid of this guy. He just said he should apologize. And I think he should apologize. I mean, if, part of grace is you should be apologizing for things that you say that you shouldn't say, all right, that are offensive. And apparently he did say, I didn't see them, but did say things that were offensive. So fine, that's not cancellation. That's just,
So let me
ramping up.
Yeah, let me tell you what I think.
For political purposes.
Let me tell you what I think of that. You're right, literally, about the congressman's words, and it's a very important point to make. So it means he's even less culpable and less worthy of receiving the shot back from the vice president. However, I think what J.D. Vance would say, if I may speak for the vice president, which Hogan does not, is Ro Khanna is part of this firmament. Ro Khanna is going to say apologize, and then the media and more liberal Democrats are going to say, and if you don't apologize, you're canceled. And even if you do apologize, you don't mean it. You don't mean it, and no apology is good enough, right? So Ro Khanna might have been restrained, but J.D. Vance knows that around and behind Ro Khanna are a bunch of people who will accept no apology. They'll say, your apology is not authentic. Your apology is not enough. So you're literally right about Khanna, but I think the vice president was not necessarily just responding to him. He was responding to the wider issue. But again, you've opened my eyes to the fact that he wasn't saying you can't hire him back. He was just saying only hire him back if he apologizes. He might have apologized. That's the other reason I get frustrated with these circumstances. We don't know the facts. The Wall Street Journal story said the website, the Twitter account was associated with him. Who knows if he actually did those tweets? I'm not saying he was hacked and that ridiculous excuse that people sometimes give, but we don't know all the facts. Maybe he did some of them, and maybe he apologized. Maybe he was drunk. Maybe it was parody. We just don't know. Now, the fact that he quit suggests that they didn't like the facts. But in my experience, people don't get fired because the firers are morally outraged. They get fired because they're worried about the heat, right? So whatever caused them to make him quit last night, they decided either the heat's not going to be so bad, or we're not going to be the people who fire someone because of coming heat. We're going to be the people who say, screw the cancelers, we're going to keep him on. And that is also a problem because it removes, as your question suggests, it removes what would be good for our culture and our kids if he apologized. If he said, I'm so grateful to my bosses of accepting my apology that I made the mistakes when I was younger. These were bad tweets, and I'm sorry I did it, and I'm so glad to be able to help the United States of America. That should be a happy ending. But I think what J.D. Vance would say is that wouldn't be a happy ending because the left would demand he be fired.
They'll keep demanding he's fired anyway. I still think it was the right thing to do. Look, I'm
what was the right thing to do?
That he should have apologized. Maybe he did apologize, but I don't think Vance had to escalate there. It wasn't necessary. And look, I'm still no Ro Khanna fan. One thing that, one reason he kind of may have wanted to get into this because he was taking heat because reportedly he ducked out of a committee vote to subpoena Elon Musk. And so he was taking heat from his Democratic colleagues for doing this.
Yeah.
So, once someone starts taking heat from their own, they got to show how loyal they are. And so what better way to get in a fight with J.D. Vance? So
it's a good theory based on the facts. I know I don't think it's true, but I understand the supposition. All right, Congressman, we're at time. Very grateful to you for coming back. And again, I always think very fondly and admiringly about how well you handled the situation with Congressman Khanna. And next time he's in a fight with J.D. Vance, maybe we'll get the four of us together and you can try to peacemake. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Sounds good. Great show.
Hogan, thank you. Hogan, where are you watching the game?
Probably in D.C.
With like a group of people at a sports bar?
Probably. Probably a group of people. Yeah.
Do you have a rooting interest?
I do, only because I went to Ole Miss, as you well know, and one of the receivers for the Eagles is A.J. Brown, I'm a big fan of, and a good kid, amazing talent, was their featured star last year, but then kind of took a back seat because of Saquon, their running back. So I'm kind of rooting for them a little bit. And, look, it's watching the Patriots in their heyday was like watching music. It's just so nice, it's so flowy and nice, and just the same thing is applicable to the Chiefs. They're so good. But if Philly's going to do it, they're going to have to get a little rough and tough with them. And so, we'll see. I'm pulling for Philly just because of AJ Brown.
All right. And will the president arrive before the game starts and stay for the whole thing?
I would imagine he stays for quite a bit of it, depending on the how close it is. Because with the football games we've been to in the past together, both pro and college, he doesn't like to keep everyone held up there while he leaves. That's always a problem too. But they may want him on the field, and then it becomes a whole thing. So who knows?
When are they taping the Brett Baer interview?
That I don't know. But obviously Fox has a Super Bowl, so they get the interview, a thing that Biden whiffed on, had the chance to do last year and didn't do.
Joe Biden, the guy with no security clearance?
That's exactly right.
Yeah. All right, Hogan, you're grateful to you for making time on a Friday night. Thank you, sir.
No, y'all are the best. Thanks, Mark.
All right, we'll see you soon. All right, thank you all for watching. Thank our two guests. Fantastic. Thanks to Congressman Lipinski. We'll be back Monday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern time for the morning meeting. Monday night, remember, the good folks from International Intrigue will be here, and we'll talk about the news of the day, including international stuff. And very grateful to you all for being part of this community. And I hope you were interested in my dissection of those two tweets. Again, a lot of respect for both those guys, but very disappointed in that exchange, and hope to play a role in piecing it all back together. Have a great weekend, great evening. Go Chiefs!